So disability in fantasy, like, you can't argue away disability rep just because it doesn't look like it does in our world. I'd say in any world, there is going to be some sort of uniqueness and differentness between abilities.
Hey there, welcome to the Winx Forever podcast. I'm Lola, creator, host, and lifelong Winx fan. I'm taking a deep dive into the very cool universe of Winx Club. So whether you've been a Winx fan since 2004, like myself, or you vaguely remember it from your childhood, or even if you're being introduced to it for the first time, I want to say welcome. This is the Winx Forever podcast. Hello, fairy friends. Welcome back to the Winx Forever podcast. I am your host, Lola Valentine. Today, we are going to be talking about all things disability and Winx Club. This is a topic that has been on my heart for a while, and after chatting with our guests on Instagram, I knew that it was an episode that had to exist in the universe. So I am super excited to welcome cosplayers, Winxers, and disability awareness advocates, Colleen Cosplays and Jette.Lupe. Guys, welcome to the show.
Yay, hi.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, I'm super excited. I know this has been like a long time coming. Literally, we've been talking about this episode for a while.
It's been a long time coming now. I'm done. No more Taylor Swift. I can't promise that.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you again for finding the time to be here to come on the show and talk about this topic that you guys make content, about disability awareness, and I really can't wait to get into this topic about how disability is represented and how maybe it could be represented better in the Winx Club franchise. But first, I want to give our audience a chance to get to know you two better. So I would love to kind of dive into both of your Winxer history and your history with cosplay. So kind of to kick it off, I want to know, do you guys remember the first time that you saw Winx Club ever?
So I watched Winx Club as a kid on 4Kids TV. I loved the show, but then like so many people, I got older and I'm like, I'm too old for that stuff. And I had to like go through this process of being too cool for it. And then, in my 20s, I got into cosplay and YouTube. And I started off by cosplaying a lot of like shonen and comic book characters. Again, I was like, I'm too cool for like the pretty girl show. But just in 2021, and it was actually Jett that got me to cosplay Winx Club for the first time.
Okay, shout out.
Yeah, it was for a collab we did. But I made my first Winx Club cosplay, and the community is just so fantastic and accepting, and everyone was so nice, and I just love being fairies. So I finally got to like put aside that like kind of like mentality of I'm too old for this or I'm too cool for this, and just got to like enjoy Winx Club for what it is.
Yeah, I love that. And Jett, what about you?
I also watched it on 4Kids.
Shout out.
I think I was a bit older that when it was on for me than when it was on for Colleen. So I didn't really have this like, oh, I'm too cool and old for this. I think I was already probably too old and cool for it. But I enjoyed it. Well, I really liked Magical Girls, and the thing was I got really into Tokyo Mew Mew, which is on either right before or right after Winx Club, and so it was just such a natural progression, and I got really, really into it. But yeah, I watched it all throughout the 4Kids stuff, and I was really disappointed when it ended, but I in the moment didn't know that it actually had all these other seasons until, just a few years ago, I went back and rewatched everything that I could find anyway. So, but yeah.
Yes, incredible. I love that we're all OG 4Kids fans here. Like that makes me so happy. That doesn't happen a lot. Incredible. I would love to know what has kept you guys engaged. You kind of touched on it a little bit, maybe like, growing up, like you might have not you didn't fall off from the fandom, but like, kind of were into other things as you were growing up, but then like re-engage with it. What got you to re-engage with the fandom after all these years?
It was the pretty outfits for me is what like initially. Okay, as a cosplayer,
Yes, no,
like
totally.
like as a cosplayer, the outfits are just like they're really bright colors and they're super cute. They have some like more complicated builds if you want to make the wings or the enchantix, but they also have some really simple builds if you want to knock something out in a weekend. And like there's just so many choices. They get so many outfits throughout the series. So I initially got into it because I wanted to like make the cute outfits, and after I had one I wanted another, and now I have 9, and like that's just kind of how it happened.
Yes, I love
Again,
that.
you're very welcome.
Yeah, it was because of your
No,
collab.
but I'm so appreciative, and it's nice to have somebody else that I'm close with that also cosplays Winx, because there's really not a lot of us, at least in the US, or
Yeah.
especially at the time too. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a few years that I knew of literally 2 other people in the entire United States. Now I know a lot of other people do it now, and now that there's more accessible or costumes that are more accessible to get, that
Mhm.
are already made, it opens up the
Mhm.
door for folks. For me,
Yeah.
I got back into it, I wanna say this is going back maybe like 7 or 8 years now, when I did the entire rewatch, because, just the way that kind of the timeline of my day was with the way that my job was, I kinda just, needed something to like fill in a void almost. I had not started cosplaying yet, and I was trying to find something to fill some kind of a void in my life in terms of like feeling like yes, I was working and I, whatever and all this stuff. Like I got a job and then I was like living on my own, and I was like, "Oh, great. Now what?" And so
Yeah.
I just needed something that was, like, fun to kind of fill the void, and now that thing is 100% cosplay for me, but in the moment, I
Yes.
was like, "Well, let me go back and kind of reassess some things that I knew I liked in the past that maybe I could get a little hyperfixation on," and so, luckily, since Winx Club is so long,
Yeah.
I I was able to kind of grasp onto that for a little while, and just it was just something that kinda made me happy. Like, I got excited, like, knowing, okay, while I was, waiting for the bus to go to work, I knew
Mhm.
that that time I could spend watching an episode of Winx Club. So it was like, you when you're getting ready for work, sometimes you're not as excited as if, like, you're getting ready to go out to be with friends or something, and
Yeah.
so knowing that that was, like, my little treat was really, like, just really it just made the day a little bit better, so that's why I got back
Yes.
into it, and then obviously with
Oh,
cosplay, I knew I was gonna cosplay Winx Club once I started to get into it, and Bloom was one of my earliest costumes that I
wow.
made. I think it was the first costume I made entirely by hand, so
Yeah.
I knew once I got that sewing machine, I was like, "That's it, I gotta do Winx Club."
Oh, I love that so much. Well, that leads us perfectly into my next question because I want to talk about how long you guys have been cosplaying for. And Jet, it sounds like Bloom was your first like handmade cosplay, so that's really fun. But what did get you guys into cosplaying?
So it's kind of complicated because like 2012 was my first con, and obviously like there's Halloween. Like where do you really mark off the start? But I started the Colleen Cosplay YouTube channel and like the entity that is Colleen Cosplay in 2018. So I've been seriously cosplaying since then and making my own cosplays and doing the YouTube tutorials and stuff like that.
Incredible. That's awesome. And what was your first cosplay?
My first cosplay, like the first one I made myself, was Riku from Final Fantasy X,
Nice.
and it looked like hot trash. But the nice thing about cosplay is, as long as you're having a good time, it can look like hot trash, and it's okay.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, and like I mean at the time you probably like I mean it wasn't hot trash to
Yeah,
you
I
then
loved
because
it. I
you're
loved it.
exactly. Yeah, it's so fun to look back on like how far you've come since you started, and I love that. Jet, what about you? How long have you been cosplaying and what was your first one?
So I started cosplaying. I did my first cosplays in 2016, but they were kinda like, they weren't, like, for realsies cosplays, they were kinda like so here's the thing, so, again, not that again, I'm not trying to be, like, the old person in this group, but, like, cosplay really wasn't a thing for when I was younger, like when,
Yeah.
there was not really opportunity to get now, yes, cosplay's been around a very long time, but in terms of it being, more in the public eye, like I
Yeah.
remember a small handful of people when I was in university, like that went to New York Comic Con, but like nobody was dressing up. It was kind of just like, oh, like there's voice actors there.
Right.
It wasn't a thing, and that was, like, I don't know what years that was, but, that was, like, kind of the first thing that I heard about it, and I had a friend at the time who cosplayed, like, on and off, like, casually, and him and I, were in some of the same classes and stuff, and so, it just took a really long time, and then, finally, years and years later, I reconnected with him, and he had invited me to, like, a local Comic-Con type thing. It
Mm.
was, like, real small, but, it was just nice to reconnect with him, like, years later, and, I did a very, very casual version of Sylveon, of course, and I actually met Sylveon's voice actress, but,
Ah.
we didn't know at the time because the in the anime, the dub was not caught up with the sub, so the sub is, of course,
Oh.
Pokemon is very far ahead, and
Mhm.
so we did not hear Sylveon's English voice yet, but when I met her, she had done Nurse Joy, and so I came as Sylveon just because, like, I was like, "Oh, if I'm gonna do a cosplay, I'm gonna do my favorite
Mhm.
thing," and, she was so excited. She was like, "Oh my god, do you know?" And I was like, I don't know anything apparently." And she was like, "I'm Sylveon in the English, and you're, like, the
Oh,
first Sylveon I've ever met." And
oh,
so, that's my claim
wow.
to fame as a Sylveon lady. Not only have I done way too many Sylveon cosplays, but I was English Sylveon's first Sylveon cosplayer. Okay,
I
okay.
love
Taking that to my
that.
grave. But
Absolutely.
that was, like, a very, like, I handmade, like, a tulle skirt,
Oh,
um, and hot glued everything else, and so, like, I would say, cosplaying, for realsies was, like, end of 2017 was when I was like, "Okay, I think this is, like, my thing." So
cute.
that's how long so sorry, that was a little long, but
No,
I
I
feel like
love
there's more of a
this.
story there. It was more like a
It was a
friend
good
at the
story.
time yeah, just took a lot of time, like, several years later, we reconnected, and he was like, "Hey,
Totally.
remember that cosplay thing?" And I was like, "Oh,
Oh.
yeah, I have time now, I could look into it," so
Absolutely. Oh, that's awesome. And then when you say for realsies, like you're like, there's levels to cosplay, right? There are people that are, like they're closet cosplayers, like, our friend Chloe down in Florida. And like, but she even has, started making more and more of her stuff. And I feel like that's a natural progression of cosplayers, like you kind of like dip your toes into it and you're like, can I do this? And then once you kind of get that bug, like even I have like some of the most like basic of basic closet cosplays, but like it is so much fun and I love it. Will I ever get a sewing machine? Probably not, because I have so many other like ADHD like hobbies that like I don't need another one. But
Me with the friendship bracelets and the, like, thousands and thousands of beads that I have right now in my house.
literally same. Exactly. So, but no, I love that. Thank you guys for sharing. I want to know what keeps you inspired to create, the magnificent cosplays that you guys make. I mean, it's a lot of time and effort, obviously, and like resources, but it takes a lot of inspiration and creativity to come up with like, and it problem solving for sure. So, what keeps you guys inspired to create them?
I mean, I definitely don't think I could do it without some sort of community feedback and having other people involved. I do a lot of groups and
Oh,
collabs and work with a lot of other people because sometimes I don't have the motivation to make an outfit for myself, but if it's to dress up as fairies with my friends, well, then we can kind of talk and we can like exchange notes and how are you making this? So for me, it's a lot more of a collaborative effort, and that also goes for like the YouTube social media side of things, where maybe I don't have a whole lot of motivation to hem this skirt, but I do really want to see this video come to life and get
mm,
edited and produced and thrown out there. And of course, like community feedback too, right? People who enjoy what I'm doing, who enjoy the sort of content I'm making. I just think that really helps you keep going because I'm pretty sure like every YouTuber thinks about quitting every year, and I think about quitting every single year. But someone will like send me a message that's like, "Oh, I made a cosplay off of your tutorial," and I'm like, "I guess I won't quit just yet. Like, I'll hang on for another year."
Yes. Oh my god, that's so relatable. Oh my god. Yes.
I forget about YouTube like 99% of the time. And like just the other day, I got 2 comments on 2 of my shorts, and I was like, oh, I forgot about YouTube. It's hard. There's so many platforms, and you're
Mhm.
trying to put content up on all of them, and each platform has like a different
Hmm.
type of content that
Yes.
is usually what people want. It's just a lot.
Yeah,
So yeah,
for
no, I
sure.
get that.
It's a lot for sure. But Jet, what about you? What
Um,
keeps you inspired creatively?
I am fueled by rage and FOMO, and I found out that people don't know what FOMO means, but it means fear of missing out. I don't know. I don't know. I guess that's a chuggy term or something like that, as the kids say. But yeah, basically, I just feel like I do a lot of groups as well, just like Colleen, and I I agree to too many groups,
Mm.
and then I'm doing like 30 new costumes every year sometimes, and it's a lot. And what keeps me motivated is like I really like working with my hands. It makes me, cosplay in general makes me feel like not I don't want to say like validation, but it's just something so different from like what I do for my job kind of thing. And so it's just really like it fills that void. Like
Mhm.
I've always been had like an artistic side. Like I was the like president of the art club at my school and
Wow.
all this stuff. Like yeah, and I mean, it's just funny because it's just so opposite of like what I do. And so it's just been a really great outlet for that kind of creativity, and it just makes me kind of feel like a whole person. But a lot of like the motivation to do more and new and keep going is like the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And also I worry that as one day I may not be able to like physically do it anymore
Mhm.
or do it to the extent that I am. And it makes me really upset when I have like a bad like pain week or
Yeah.
something and I can't work on something and I like it's not fitting in my timeline and I'm like ah so anyway, it's rage and
Yeah.
FOMO. That's for me anyway.
I love that. That's so good. Oh my gosh. Well, you two both mentioned a little bit about, kind of stepping into this Winxer community online, especially, and kind of falling into it a little bit, especially as American Winxers in the US. It's hard because we're few and far between a little bit, and it's hard to come by a lot of us. So I want to know, like, what is your favorite part about being a part of the Wingster community?
I just think it's how close knit the group feels. Before I was really into the magical girl stuff, I did mostly DC Comics and Naruto, which are humongous fandoms, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're huge. You can never know every person who is even an influencer, like talking about DC Comics or talking about Naruto. And I was actually like scared when I got into Magical Girls because I thought like all my followers would leave because they wanted to see like the superhero stuff. And this was like such a
Yeah.
huge pivot from what I usually do. I was like, all my followers are going to leave. It's going to be awful. Everyone's going to hate it. But I was like going through something. I needed a bit of sparkly magical girl in my life.
Yes.
So I gave Winx a try, and like the response was so amazing. I was prepared for it to be like my worst video of the year, and I was prepared for people to be like, "Who's this? I don't recognize her. Bring back
Right.
Supergirl." But no, everyone was really great. My first cosplay was Tekna, and even just back in like 2021, you could not buy Winx Club costumes. They were
Yeah.
not manufactured. So if you wanted to cosplay from Winx Club, you had to make it yourself. So I made this Techno cosplay, and you can't even buy like a stretch fabric in the colors that she wears in
Oh,
season
wow.
one. So I had to custom dye all the fabric and custom pattern it, and like
Wow.
it was a whole ordeal. But I ended up with this Techno cosplay that I really loved, and I was like, no one else is gonna love her like I do. But I was proven wrong. A lot of people really liked it. It got a lot of traction. The Winx Club official account shared my Techno cosplay, and that brought in a lot of Winxers. And I love how the community like it's so close knit that like you kind of know each other. Like all three of
Yeah.
us knew each other before doing this podcast because
Mhm.
it's such a close community, and it's just amazing. It's the sort of community I just never got in these bigger fandoms.
Yeah, totally. I can relate to that. And Jet, what about you?
I'm just happy that there are other people that even know what it is. Which I'm finding out that more people, like, recognize it or
Yeah,
have been, like, casual fans in the past, which
right.
is nice. So it's just nice, especially, like, being closer with, the very few, like, craftsmanship based Winx Club people that there are in the United States. Like, there's really just a few of us, and it's, everyone's been really supportive, at least, the US people have been very supportive to each other in terms of, like, "Hey, how did you make that?"
Yeah.
Or, "What fabric did you use? How did you do the harness for your wings?" Like, those few people I've felt like have been really, really sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. I can so relate to both of those because yeah, like finding because growing up, I felt like I was the only one that knew what Winx Club was. Like Winx Club was my show. And like it was you had to be there, sort of like you had to know where to watch it. It was on freaking like Saturday mornings, like 7 a.m. It was like something ridiculous. And it was just so like hard to find on its own, but then you would have like the dolls everywhere and stuff, and you're just like, well, clearly other people do know about this because like I'm seeing it out in stores, in the early 2000s, but now to like find and connect with people like you too is just like it's so magical and special, and I just like I'm so thankful for it every day. I do want to ask, kind of going back to starting to cosplay, what's something maybe that you would say to someone starting out doing cosplay for the first time or wanting to get more serious about cosplay, or maybe what's something that you wish someone had told you when you were starting out?
I think like now currently there's just so much of this culture of like if you're doing cosplay, you're like maybe you're on social media, maybe you're trying to go pro, and there's such this mentality of like professional cosplayer is a thing
Oh,
now and it needs to be perfect and like you need to have it be really nice to compete, and that's like you can wear anything as long as you're having a good time.
yeah.
You're cosplaying, right? Because what are we doing? We're adults playing dress up. That's what it is at the end of the day. We are dressing up in costumes, and like we have like full adult jobs and responsibilities, and we are setting those aside so we can dress up as fairies. So I just say like there's no wrong way to cosplay, and I see a lot of newer cosplayers especially they kind of feel like, oh, this isn't good enough. I can't, if you're into competitions, I can't compete this costume, or like this isn't good enough for me to be a cosplayer. And like really it's dressing up. It's dress up play. Like when you're a kid, we're just adults now and haven't let go of it. So I'm still dressing up as fairies. So just like cosplay can be anything that brings you joy, and try not to lose sight of that in
Yeah.
the rush for maybe social media fame or that sort of culture.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And Jet, what about you?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna echo some of what, Colleen had said. I think the biggest thing is saying, like, just do it. Like, if you wanna do it, do it. Like, don't let anyone or anything hold you back. But I think that people need to recognize that there are different levels that you can be within, and all of them are valid. You don't have to be trying to be cause famous or try to get a bunch of views or do, like all these TikTok trends or something in your cosplays, or use audios from the show and like put on very, very perfect makeup or anything. Like, it can still be a closet cosplay, and that's fine. And if you want to go into, hardcore craftsmanship, that's fine too. Everyone is valid. It's just recognizing that there are different levels that you can play in, and all of them are fine, and you don't have to be perfect. And there is a lot of pressure, especially with TikTok, especially with TikTok. And people just need to recognize that you can do cosplay at your own pace and at your own budget. That's actually a gigantic thing that I think people need to recognize, is that this is not cheap. And there are definitely different ways to do this with different budgets, and there are budget friendly options and things like that. But like the the rate at which some of these like cause famous people are putting out new content
Yeah.
is just not feasible for most people. And I think especially younger people getting into cosplay, that's all that they're seeing are these, I don't even want to say professional cosplayers. I don't think that's the right word. It's just these influential
Yeah.
cosplayers. And they're seeing that and thinking like, oh, if I'm not doing that, then I'm not doing it right. And I just need people to recognize there's different levels to play in and find what works for you in every aspect of your life, because you might be like a god tier seamstress, but if you don't have the budget right now to be buying Dupont silk, you're okay. Because eventually you will, when it comes time. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. I just see a lot of people not budgeting within their feasibility, and it just makes me upset because I just want people to succeed in all aspects of their life.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think it too is it's just such an easy comparison game, right? To fall into that you're not comparing yourself, like you said, to these influencer cosplayers like that, their first works. You're comparing yourself to like what they've, like built up to and like learned how to do or have the money to do. And it's like I think that's yeah, just a very unfair comparison that like is so easy to fall into that yeah, it's a good point to highlight. Awesome. Well, I think that leads us into taking a short break, but before we do, it's become a tradition here on the Winx Forever podcast to lead our guests in a round of rapid fire questions about their Winx Club favorites. So, Colleen, Jett, are you ready for these rapid fire questions?
I'm so ready.
I feel anxious because I don't know how fast we have to go. Like, are we doing I'll just go. So Colleen's going first. We've established
Yeah.
that. Every question Colleen goes first, so
Yeah.
that way we don't talk over each other. Sit up.
There's no mess up. There's no wrong answers. This is all, yeah. So we'll do question, Colleen will answer, Jett will answer. All right.
Okay.
Here we go. Who is your favorite Winx Club member?
Techna.
Roxy.
Oh, okay.
We got a
Hot
Roxy
takes
over
already
here.
out of the gate.
Oh, you're gonna get a lot of hot takes from me.
I
if
love
go
it. I
ahead.
love it. All right. Here for all of the hot and spicy takes. We're here for it. All right. Favorite season of Winx Club?
Season 3.
Season 4.
Okay.
Because that's Roxy.
Because Roxy, yes. Duh, I've seen a pattern here. All right. Favorite specialist or male warrior in the show?
Timmy.
None of them.
Oh.
We don't need a single one of them. But if I had to pick, I would also say Timmy. He's the only useful one, but we'll keep going.
All right. Favorite Winx Club movie?
The first one.
All right.
I don't like any of them. I'm sorry.
Wow. All
I
right.
don't mind that they exist. They're fine. They're just not for me. It's
That's
okay.
totally okay. That's fine. This is great. I love this. Favorite transformation?
Enchantix.
Believe it.
Okay. Cool. And then least favorite transformation.
This is a stupid reason, but Butterflix, because it's so pretty and I don't think I could ever make it. Like, it's so complicated. It just makes me
It's
mad
so
because there's so many
pretty.
petticoats and I'm like, I could never. How dare you be
I'm
beautiful?
mad that Roxy didn't give one. I'm mad that Roxy didn't
It's
get
a
one.
true tragedy. Like, it doesn't make any sense why she wouldn't have, like, out of all of them.
I'm just jealous, okay? It's not that I hate Butterflix, it's that I'm jealous that they have these dresses that would be so difficult to fabricate in real life.
I really want to make one so
Oh.
bad. If I do, I will try to make like a step by step so that you can make one.
Oh,
Colleen.
good.
My least favorite is Enchantix.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh,
I know.
okay.
That's the hottest of the takes.
Yeah,
I'm
truly,
sorry.
yeah. There's gonna be some comments about that one, but for sure. Favorite romantic relationship in the series?
Techna and Timmy.
Makes sense.
None of them. We don't need them.
Jett says
I'm
love
sorry.
is dead.
Okay. If I have to pick one, Darcy and Riven.
Yo. Yes.
Because Musa could do so much better. Let her have
Oh
him.
my gosh.
Mulan. No, actually, no. I take that back. You know what? I actually like Aisha and Naboo.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good one.
But we don't need them though. Overall, they could not be there.
We don't need men at all in Winx Club. No love, just fairies.
Just fairies.
Literally,
Winx just fairies. like the original
exactly.
pilot. Incredible.
Oh boy.
Oh my god. And then last question, favorite villain of the show.
Diaspro.
Ooh.
Oh. I think that they did her dirty. I think they could have done her
She
so much
deserved
better.
better.
But
She deserves way
yeah,
better.
she really could have had like a full villain arc, and that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I think the Wizards of the Black Circle, not just because of like season 4. I just
Right.
think they're kind of like really like silly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They've got that.
Like since they're like kind of like their own little gang, like I feel like they just feel more like, I don't know. They feel more like a presence in some of the other. I don't know.
Yeah.
I liked how I thought that how they worked in the season was better than kind of just showing up and being like, bah ha ha, something messed up for the season or for this episode. I messed something up.
Yeah.
How will you fix it? I don't know. I liked how they worked. I also like their outfits. But
Oh yeah, same. Awesome. Cool. Well, that does it for rapid fire. You guys did great. Love all the hot takes. This has been super fun. Well, cool. Well, we are going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to dive into our main topic, which is disability in the Winx Club franchise. So don't go anywhere. Hey fairy friends, Lola Valentine here. In case you missed it, the Winx Forever podcast launched our very own Discord community. Discord has been a great place to connect with so many wonderful Winxers from around the world to talk about our favorite fairies. I wanted to try and recreate the magic of the original Winx Club online English forums from the old WinxClub.com website. So we've got forums where you can post your own topics and respond to others' posts in every Winx topic imaginable. Click the invite link in the description below to join the Winx Forever Podcast Discord community. And remember, the magic's in you. And we are back with today's guests, cosplayers, Winxers, and disability awareness advocates, Colleen Cosplays and Jette.Lupe. Hello, ladies. We are now going to dive into our topic about all things disability in the Winx Club series and franchise. But before we do you both of you want to give kind of, I don't know, an overview or just kind of a little insight into your own personal experience with disability?
Yeah, of course. And I just want to kind of preface this with not every disabled person needs to disclose this stuff publicly. With me and with Jett, this is something that you introduced us as disability awareness advocates. We talk about this stuff online. That's what we do. So I have talked about what my disability is online to kind of help raise awareness and kind of for educational purposes. But obviously, no disabled person should feel like they have to. But I will. So I have a progressive cartilage disorder. So I was able-bodied most of my life, all growing up. I actually did athletics. I did cross country. I did track. I did martial arts. I did all those things. And then in high school, I started having knee pain, and it just got progressively worse. So what cartilage is, for those that don't know, cartilage protects your bones and it absorbs impact. So if you are running or you are jumping, your cartilage is what is protecting your bones from that impact, so you don't feel it as much. It's like a little cushion. And my cartilage is detaching from the bone and it is deteriorating. So things like weight bearing and running and jumping become really painful for me. So I am now an ambulatory wheelchair user, and if you don't know what that term is, it's someone who doesn't use a wheelchair full time, just in some situations. So as you can imagine, like I can still stand for 2 minutes, I can move my legs, I can walk a little bit, but I might need crutches if I'm going to run an errand, or I might need a wheelchair if I'm going to spend a whole day rolling around a con. And the majority of wheelchair users are ambulatory. So there's so many reasons people may use a wheelchair, whether that's like EDS, arthritis, just joint pain and instability. There's so many reasons for that. And that's just another thing that doesn't have a lot of awareness is, you know, reasons someone may use a wheelchair and why they might use different mobility aids for different days. So approaching this conversation about disability, I have the perspective of someone who was able-bodied and just didn't really give a thought to disability awareness whatsoever. When I watched Winx Club as a kid, like, truly did not cross my mind, but rewatching it as a disabled adult, I was like, oh, interesting. So I have like that perspective of being the able-bodied person consuming this media, but also the perspective of someone who has worn knee braces and crutches and used a wheelchair and, you know, has kind of progressively gone through these different stages of disability.
So I am a low vision person. I have vision loss. And so my disability is kind of on like the blindness, vision loss, visual impairment, low vision spectrum. I say spectrum because blindness is a spectrum. In fact, there's a very small percent of people on the spectrum who actually have no vision at all. Many of us have some usable vision, even if it is poor. Without getting into the nitty-gritty, I don't have any central vision, and the vision I do have is not great. I am a partial cane user, so I do use a white cane in certain circumstances. And not actually, most people on the spectrum don't use a cane, and there's actually a lot of reasons why we don't. And a big reason is because people don't understand blindness. They think that the only people using a white cane are people that can't see anything, and so there's a lot of stigma around
Yeah.
it. So I'm lucky enough that I do have a decent amount of usable vision, and I'm generally with somebody, so I don't always need it. But there are a lot of times where I do absolutely always use it. And then I also suffer from some chronic illnesses, which I don't really feel comfortable getting like fully into, but they do cause things like chronic pain, chronic fatigue, a lot of different things on that spectrum. And all of these, my vision impairment and my chronic illnesses are all, what was the word that you used, Colleen? Progressive.
Okay.
So sorry, I couldn't think of the right word there, but yeah. So, but I'm coming from somebody that has had these issues my whole life. Um, but, not 100% knowing what it was or what it was called, but, for sure, I was watching Winx Club on a TV that I had to sit, a foot in front
Yeah.
of to be able to watch it. So that's kind of that's at least the perspective I was watching it from, but I was not wise enough to really think about these things, until, rewatching it as an adult, and
Yeah.
you're kinda like, was that a good thing? What did you mean by that, Winx Club?"
Right.
So well, in terms of a lot of things, there like, not just disability things, but, like, there's a lot of things that I'm like,
What were they doing?
and the writing, and even, like, the writing between the different studios is just wild, and some of them I'm like, "Ooh," because if you watch, like, side by side, you're like, "Why would you change that to that?" Or, vice versa. Why would you
Yeah.
not just leave it alone?
Oh,
Anyway.
yeah. No, there's definitely a ton of that in Winx Club. There's no shortage. And yeah, I want to dive into a little bit of that, starting with kind of the disability representation that we do get in the series, and which is not a lot, but I want to talk about it because it's a pivotal moment for one of the main fairies in the show. Of course, we're talking about Aisha, or if you grew up with her name being Layla, it's interchangeable for me. Sometimes I'll call her Layla, sometimes I'll call her Aisha. It's the same person. But yeah, so in season 3, of course, we all know how Aisha gained her Enchantix. She was on her home planet, and Valtor was causing mayhem on her home planet, as he does, and he casts a spell on her that causes her a full vision to just go away. So she becomes blind, and for about an episode and a half, right, she is blind. And instead of using this as a moment of, you know, kind of like, I don't know if like disability empowerment is a word. I don't know if that's like, whatever. But for having it be like a good teaching moment about a disability that people actually have, they kind of did what a lot of these shows do, of the trope of like, oh well, she's got to be cured, this is one of the worst things that could ever happen to her, and that's kind of not a great picture to paint for, especially like you said, like when we were kids, we probably weren't thinking about it like this, but even still, like that stuff is subliminal. Like it is in a lot of media of like, you are disabled, therefore something's wrong with you and we have to find a cure for it. And that's not an option for many disabled people in real life. And so I want to dive into that a little bit, and especially Jett, with your experience, as a person who is visually impaired, like what is your take on the Winx Club's approach to this very
Well,
yeah.
well, definitely. So one thing they got right
Mm-hmm.
was that Aisha was mad. She was
Yeah.
angry, and you know what? I get that. It's so annoying to not be able to read stuff.
Yeah.
It's so like it's so annoying that the like kind of the society that we live in, it's just not made to be disability friendly in general. But yeah, it's infuriating when you can't get somewhere on your own without having to ask somebody because you can't read the
Mm-hmm.
signs. And I mean, I was talking about this earlier, but I take the subway into the city, on a somewhat regular basis. I don't do it often enough to know exactly where I'm going yet. And I'm lucky that I usually have somebody with me, but I use my cane on the subway. But if I was by myself, I'd have to ask constantly. And the thing is, it's hard to find a worker, and then people get annoyed when you talk to them. Like it's very annoying, and so her anger, especially because she went from being like not blind to being completely
Yeah.
blind in one episode, and she was, she's the sporty one, she's active, and not that people who are blind can't be active and sporty. Actually, a fellow I knew really well, he actually was really good at archery,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's just, you learn to adapt to be able to do the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
One of my an old colleague, he was matched with a guide dog that was really into running because he is a cross country skier. He was a runner who did marathons, but he couldn't do them alone. He'd have to be tethered to somebody who would run the marathon with him. And so he was able to find a way to accommodate that. So now he runs marathons by himself,
Yeah.
with his dog, but the dog is like an extension of him. And so what I wish that they had done, and I know they only had a short bit of time
Yeah.
in the episode and with this whole ordeal, but her being angry was 100% like on the nose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not every person that's disabled is mad, okay? Not so, like, that's another thing. I also want to make it clear that Colleen and I and our perspectives on this is not, we're not encompassing of every single person with a
Yeah.
disability. Everyone has different lives and lives in different ways. So just making that clear, but at least from my perspective, I was like, yeah, I'd be angry too.
Yeah.
But I wished that instead of them being like, okay, let's find a cure. I don't know, right? There's more that they could have done. I wish that they had shown her being able to figure out how to adapt, like maybe being able to feel the waves of the water or something. I don't know, kind of like Toph from Avatar Last
Yeah.
Airbender. Something, because I feel like Aisha could have done that. She could have for sure like figured that out. and also the way that they kind of just like dragged her through everything, like they just took her by the hand and was like, and they didn't know what to do either.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there's a moment where Bloom says something, and Aisha goes, "Bloom, I'm blind." And I'm like,
Yes.
"Yeah, girl, I'd be mad too."
Yeah.
But so I just wish they didn't like take her by the wrist and just drag her through everything. I really wish they had taken some time to have like her figure out, how she could do this. Or why Techno not just like figure out something? Like
Give her a mobility
I
aid. Come on.
yeah,
Yes.
it's not,
And a
and that's the
magical one
thing,
at
because
that. Like,
yeah,
hello?
I was gonna say we're in the magic world, and the thing is, like, we go back to Earth multiple times in the show, where even if only Earthlings can have disabilities, like, it's well established that they know that Earth is a place, and they go there often enough that they'd be like Bloom could have been like, "Oh, you know what? On Earth we have disabilities like this. Let me ask." Or like, I don't know, I live in a giant city. I'm sure there's people who are disabled that live here. And
Right.
she can be like, "Oh, people that are blind on Earth, like some of them use like a stick that they can use, it's a cane, but whatever." They
Yeah.
could have literally done anything, and that they didn't is a little disappointing. I know they had a short bit of time, and I feel like a lot of the story plots they kind of just try to get
They
through as
just,
fast as
yeah.
possible, but yeah, that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. Like, Bloom's never met a disabled person in her life. I find that so hard to believe. But I also think that it falls on to, like, yes, they're writing for children. Yes, they're writing, for a very short amount of time. That's, yeah, for sure. But also making sure that you have some insight into what you're writing about as you're writing
Yeah,
these
because
things.
and Winx Club is so diverse in terms of like, at the time,
Hmm.
it was a magical girl show that was popular, that had girls that, were very diverse from one another,
Hmm.
not only on, their races, but also like just different things that they were into. Like I feel like they really went above and beyond to separate each girl versus other magical girls. Like, sure, they all have different personalities, but I feel like they all start to kind of blend together. Versus, I really felt like Winx Club generally, at least for a long time, really kept each girl very different from one another, and I like that. And so it's disappointing that that wasn't like a diversity thing that they could have included.
Yeah.
I mean, even for a short time, or like include a character that had a disability. Like that's
Right.
also just wild to me that the show has gone on for so long. And
Yeah.
also, if you're writing for children, there are children that have disabilities. There are children that have
Literally.
met people with disabilities. Like, it's not like it doesn't exist. And I think that it would help children to understand more of like the world that they live in. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, absolutely. And this isn't the first time too that Winx Club had, a an ailment or whatever that they see a disability as, an ailment to be cured
Hmm.
and not something that they could, adapt with and live with. In the comics, actually, there are also a lot of non-visible disabilities that like characters struggle with for some time. And then but they use it as the storyline or the plot line of like, well, we have to cure this person with
Oh.
magic, and it's like that's not feasible in real life. Like that's not
You
realistic.
guys remember the episode where Stella became, quote, ugly?
Yep,
Oh
yep,
yeah, yeah.
yep.
And that's like another example of like, obviously, again, it was for the story plot, but the fact that, like, I mean, being, ugly is, subjective and all that, but like that she couldn't even stand. I don't know. That was another episode that kind of bothered me. Was
Mhm.
like, she's the ideal pretty person of the group,
Yeah,
right? And it's just kind of like, oh, if she's not the ideal pretty person of the group, who is she then, kind of thing. And it's
right.
like, I don't know. I didn't love that episode
I
either.
think
Yeah.
the other thing about this that doesn't sit right with me is they wrote their characters in a way that they were willing to overcome these things. Like, yeah, Stella was like, I'm ugly, and she was really nervous, but later on, I forget what season that they have to like face, I think season 3, they have to like face the
Mhm.
trials, and Stella gives up her beauty for the
Yeah.
the thing. And at that point, she's like, oh, well, my boyfriend's just gonna have to deal with this face. So, like, they have created characters that are willing to overcome, that are willing to adapt, that are willing to find different ways. And I even feel like with Aisha, maybe in some of the dubs, she was like, this isn't gonna stop me. Not that, like, disability can't be hard. Obviously, like, you can be angry, you can have grief, but they created these characters that, like, I don't think Aisha would have just quit the Winx.
Yeah.
I think that she would have found mobility aids. Maybe the other girls could have helped. Maybe they could have come up with, like, a mobility tool or some sort of process. And I think she was willing to do that. So it almost felt like the other girls kind of wanted Aisha to be cured as much, if not more, than Aisha herself. And that's something that kind of doesn't sit well with me, as, like, you know, I've been disabled for quite a few years now, and at some point you get angry, you process that grief. I still process that grief sometimes. And sometimes I don't want to overcome. I just want to be me. But also, like, it's such a complex issue, because also it doesn't feel right when I am happy with my life and happy with my place in the world, and the people around me want me to be better. So, I mean, I would have liked to see the other girls be more like, this doesn't change your status in the Winx Club. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna help you adapt. And I truly don't remember if they did have anything like that in the show, but just, like, the people around you being like, oh, we'll fix this. We'll fix you. And in the real life, a lot of times you can't be better. You can't be cured. My disorder is something that has no cure, no treatment that has worked for me, and having the people around you want you to get better more than you. Also, like, I feel like sometimes just some acceptance of, like, hey, you're different, you're going through something, and we're okay if you don't want to get better, which is also, like, disabled people have, like, very different views on this. Like, you know, are you happy with where you are? Would you want the magic fairy bottle? Like, you know, those are the sort of things you have to explore. And I get that they had limited time, but I wish the other girls weren't pushing for a cure more than Aisha. Like, I truly don't remember, but I feel like they might have been.
Yeah, that's so interesting you bring that up, because I don't know how either of you feel or about the Fate the Winx Saga series, but in season 2 of Fate the Winx Saga, I'm in the middle of going through a rewatch of it for the podcast. In season 2, when Musa loses her powers and she becomes disabled in that way as a fairy, and that is the exact mentality that the rest of the Winx Suite members have, is like, we're gonna cure you, and she doesn't want it, like, at all, you know. And so, like, they didn't even think to, like, ask, like, hey, do you even want our
she's
help?
not useful anymore.
Exactly.
If you're not if you're not useful, then you're a burden. And so, and that's, I mean, sometimes that's how, like, people or society or the world can make you feel when you can't do stuff. And, like, like, it's like they were like, oh, Aisha, you're supposed to be, like, pulling your weight here.
We gotta fix this. We need to go get the magic fairy bottle.
And, like,
and I mean, you want your friends to be supportive in a way of, like, okay, Aisha, we're gonna figure this out. Like, you know, let's definitely explore options where we can find, you know, a way to undo this curse, but also at the same time, like, in the meantime, let's figure out ways that, you know, we can help you adapt to be independent and everything. Because she was, you know, she was the independent queen of the group, kind of, you know. And so that's it. It was so hard for it to be her out of the group. But then, right, they just kind of rush past. Like you said, they use these things as, like, a plot point, which is fair, and it's a children's show, and maybe we shouldn't judge it so hard. But I feel
that's
like
why we're here.
It's been going on, right? It's been going on for so many years that I mean, they won't even give us Roxy back. But, like, you know, I don't know that they're gonna put in. I don't know that they're gonna put in a disabled character, but, like, yeah, it'd be good. But yeah, I haven't seen the second season of Fate. I was not a fan of the first season. That's another, like, hot take. So I did not put myself through watching the second season. But it's interesting though that they did that, and then everybody wanted her to have it back so that she could pull her weight, or and or maybe they'd say, well, you're not really like us anymore, so you can't sit with us anymore,
Mhm.
kind of thing. I don't know. So
Yeah. And yeah, that's a huge like plot point for Musa in season 2 of Fate, that like really I did enjoy how they went about it in Fate, because Musa did tell them, like, hey, like, no, like, I don't even want this, really. Like, I can be useful in other ways. She actually like starts to train to become like more like a specialist. And it's like a very cool, like, I don't know. I liked the way that they approached it better in Winx Club, but it was very funny to like have this conversation and like see those parallels even now. Like, yeah, and to your point, Jet, of like Winx Club was so ahead of its time in a lot of ways of like representation and the different topics that they tackled. I don't think that it's unfair for us to point at this and be like, okay, but like you did all those things well. Why couldn't you spend a little more time on
yeah.
this? Like it wouldn't have taken much. Like you said, like it could have been like even just like, well, while you are blind, because it wasn't like a natural progression. Like a lot of people's disabilities. It was a very very stark, like you could see and now you cannot because of a spell, and it wasn't. So it gave already the way that she acquired the disability, it gave that, well, it can be cured because it's a spell sort of thing. But like even in that moment of like, okay, well, while you are, it would have been so in Aisha's character to have been like, no, I can still do all the things, just I've got to figure out different ways to do it. Like I think that would have been a very cool thing to have seen. That I don't know. Maybe in a reboot. We'll see. We'll have to see.
I mean, just ask, yeah, like I said earlier, ask the Avatar people.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I know that Toph, for example, Toph lived with that disability for a long time, but like she figured out how to do everything,
Yeah.
and it's all about accommodations and adaptations.
Yeah.
So and of all of them, Aisha would be the one to be able to figure it out, and they got Tekna in the group. Like, it makes me so
think
mad.
she could make
They have
something.
flying chairs. They already have flying chairs. So like really, it would be so easy for them to include somebody who has a disability where they need to, like, they can't walk, or an ambulatory wheelchair user, or like a full-time wheelchair user, or somebody that needs to be in a flying chair.
Right,
I don't know,
right.
you know what I mean? And I know that we had talked about in some of our notes of like, oh well, even if their legs don't work, they still have wings to fly. I get it, because they wear those stupid shoes that they don't have to walk in the stupid shoes, right? They don't have to walk in them. And so I understand people like, well, they wouldn't have to walk anyway, but like that's not the point.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is they could have a character that's in like a flying chair, and when they transform, the chair transforms and the wings are on the chair, kind of like Colleen's cosplays.
Literally,
like,
yeah.
I just think
Make me
it'd
canon
be
in the Winx
so
universe.
easy.
Yes.
Right? I don't know. I feel like, yeah, your fashion sense and your hair and everything, I don't know, just everything about, I feel like it would be so easy. Just copy paste.
The other thing that a lot of, like we've seen in newer releases of like Disney and Pixar is even something more subtle of animating a wheelchair character in the background when they're in Gardenia, or even things like animating in disabled parking signs, or animated in the disabled buttons, or stuff like that. That was something that what Pixar's Turning Red got praised for a lot.
Yeah, they had like even characters with Dexcoms too, like things that aren't even physical disabilities in that way. I was happy to see a lot of representation.
Exactly, and it wasn't that the main cast had any like huge like physical disability that had to be discussed or become a plot point. They just animated a wheelchair user in the background, and even little things like that without having to explain to the kids why the person uses a wheelchair. It's just kind of a nice nod of like, people who use wheelchairs exist, and they roll around sometimes in Gardenia. Like, who would have thought? Because I can't even think of a time that they've like animated a disabled person in Gardenia, except, I don't know, maybe an old lady with a cane, because that's apparently the only representation we get anymore.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, even somebody with a like a clear service dog, it doesn't even have to be a guide dog.
Yeah.
It could just be like somebody that's got a dog like on a leash with like a vest on. I mean, like just
Yeah.
again, they're in Gardenia.
They have Love and
like,
Pet.
so
Like the
often.
option was right there for them to like make
Yes.
cute service dog
cute-
harnesses or something.
Yes. If you're enjoying this episode of the Winx Forever podcast, be sure to follow the show on your preferred streaming platform so that you're notified when new episodes are released. I think that leads us really well into, looking at the creative ways that they could have gone about providing the disability representation. Like, what would that look like in a magical fairy world in Winx Club? Colleen, I know you had a couple of thoughts exploring that.
I have so many thoughts about this.
Yes.
Okay, so to start this off, like something that I'm sure you've all heard this argument before and it always makes me mad is like, why does Harry Potter have glasses? If we can just why didn't he fix his eyesight with his glasses if he's such a powerful wizard?
Oh my
and
God.
The representation of disability in fantasy, a lot of people will take it as in a fantasy world, disability does not exist.
Right.
Because we would use magic. And the thing is, like, disability is going to exist. It's just going to look different because it's a fantasy world, not our world. So maybe say your argument that they can fix every ailment with magic, which I have a whole theory about how there's no healthcare system in magic, but like I'll put that aside for a moment. Let's say that, you know, any sort of disability that we would consider in our world, like what I have, could be magic fairy wanded away, but there would be other sorts of disabilities. Okay, so I mean, the fairies, what about the fairies that don't have their wings yet? Like, they haven't earned their magic wings. What about fairies that, you know, maybe they can't use their power in a certain way? Maybe they need some sort of gadget or a magical booster or like some sort of mobility aid. My favorite like video that kind of represents this is Barbie Fairytopia, because she lives in a fairy world. Wow, fairies, look at the parallel. And she starts out without wings and she has to kind of navigate this world that was built for flying. Because in a world where everyone flies, not being able to fly would be a disability. Okay, not being able to walk is a disability here, but in this fantasy world, not being able to fly would be the disability, right? And you would need, you know, some sort of mobility aid. Like maybe there's a fairy that has to use a hover bike, like the specialist, because she isn't able to fly with her wings or something. Like, there are so many ways you can show disability. And I would also like to say that Murda is canonically disabled in this way in the universe. She's turned into a pumpkin, like no body autonomy, unable to move any limbs. She's a pumpkin!
Oh my God, you're so right. Because I was thinking, my thoughts automatically went to Galatea in season 3 when she got her wings literally ripped off by Icy. But then, of course, their answer to that was like, oh,
Magic
Misa
fairy
just got
dust.
her, magic fairy dust, can cure everything. And so even ripped off fairy wings, that was crazy. Like, that moment, that's insane to me. Not only like is the whole place on fire, also this girl just got mutilated. Like, oh my God, in front of our eyes.
Yeah, and that would be a disability. So disability in fantasy, it doesn't, like, you can't argue away disability rep just because it doesn't look like it does in our world. I'd say in any world, there is going to be some sort of uniqueness and differentness between abilities. You know, like, there's going to be some sort of different levels which people operate, and there's probably going to be some societal opinion about, like, those people who, you know, don't have wings or whatever, which is why we gotta fix it with the fairy dust, you know, fix the disability. But yeah, I think actually, like, I'm just gonna say I believe Murda is disability rep in that viewpoint of her losing every bodily function. And what do they do for a person who's essentially in a coma? They send her to live with a college freshman in her dorm. Like that's how they solve disability in Winx Club. They're like, maybe a college student can help you, and they just leave Murda as a pumpkin.
I don't think that they ever contacted any adult about that, actually.
See, that's
Yeah, what about her parents? Like, it seems like most people's parents are in the picture, but they didn't even like send home a note to her parents. Be like,
your daughter's
"Hey,
a
by the
pumpkin."
way."
I don't even know if Griffin noticed she was missing, because like it seems like Griffin would have been like, "Oh, hey, one of my students isn't in assembly today." Like, hello?
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah, like sometimes the schools were so strict, like randomly, and then like they be out missing for weeks and nobody knows.
Well-
it's just like, but then you guys were up past curfew. You better clean the
it's like
library.
Murda is literally a pumpkin. Like, priorities, Farragonda.
Yes, like I don't think that they ever told like any adults. Like I don't think that they ever brought her to the nurse. Like at one point, Stella's like whole solution was we could go find a place to plant her. No, Stella, that's not the solution.
like we're literally talking about like essentially a disabled person who is unable to operate like any of their limbs, unable to do anything for themselves, and they just like left her in this dorm room. And I just think they don't, like, there are so many things that don't make sense. Like, if guardian fairies exist, would they be the healthcare system? Because they're the only ones with magic strong enough to cure disability, because like they have the fairy dust. That's how they fix the wings. That's how they fix the blindness. Where was the guardian fairy to help Murda? Why was she abandoned by the healthcare system?
Well, we know they can't bring people back to life, so I don't know.
Nabu is just in a coma. Also an example of disability rep.
Yes,
He's probably in a college dorm somewhere waiting for a freshman to figure out how to bring him back.
Yeah, it's just they have like the top professors of the universe, and they're like,
sorry about
hey,
you,
Flora, you like plants, right? You want to just have another
Would you
one?
like to be a caretaker of this person and, I don't know, maybe cure them? Like, I mean, you don't have that much on your plate. You're just a kid, but like maybe.
Which like in a weird way, I think that Flora like was really excited about it, because she had like all of her like experiments and stuff that she would do, and like in a weird way, she's like Murta was a pet project. Like I'm like, that's a little messed up.
A little
when
messed
you think
up.
about it.
Was that the same season where she was was it Crystal, the girl that could heal? She had like pink hair. I wanna say her name was Crystal,
no, that
but I
was
can't
way that
remember.
was after Nickelodeon got the reins.
Yeah, that's later.
I was gonna say, because maybe she was like, I'm gonna prove that I can heal just like this girl.
No, but that would have been a
Crystal
great
her
plot
name
point.
though?
Yeah,
You
Crystal was
remember
her
her
name.
though,
I
right?
use Murda
Okay.
to like one up this other girl. So awful. But like we see it again and again, because Sky gets amnesia, which like I would also consider to be like pretty serious. Like, you know, like amnesia to the level where he forgot his entire life. Like that's serious. And Bloom was just like, okay, Sky, well, maybe you can see the school nurse, but please don't forget I'm your girlfriend. Like,
Ew.
Oh, you know what? Bloom was so selfish throughout this entire series. Like, a lot of them, like, okay, everybody's like, oh, Stella's a snob and stuff. But sometimes, like, when you really sit back and look at it, you're like, was Bloom the problem?
Bloom
like,
was the problem.
Was always the problem.
And she's always like, Sky, get over it. Like, you are that guy. Go show my parents that you're that guy. It's like this level of amnesia, like, is there brain trauma? Is there injury? Is there, like, this is a very serious thing when someone has amnesia to this level. And the way they solved it was they just like kind of dragged him around and made him fight monsters with swords until he remembered. Like, there is no healthcare system, except you hope that a fairy with enchantix just happens along and is like, oh, good thing I have some fairy dust to cure you, because we have no healthcare here.
I will say, in the comics, there does seem to be some semblance of healthcare, because there are like, you know, characters that are, you know, either in the hospital or like bedridden in the hospital, and like they have like blood transfusions and things like that, and it's like some like so I think that the constrictions that the series faces with like it only being like 20 to 30 minutes long on, you know, like that's generous. Sometimes 15 minutes of like total story length. I think that runs into a lot of like the details that like we miss on the world building, and we have to like piece those things together. But like you've all of the examples that you've given, like clearly in the series canonically there's probably not healthcare. In the canon of the comics, thankfully there's at least something in place. But
and that's like free healthcare, and Enchantix fairy dust bottles are like privatized healthcare. If you can afford a fairy dust bottle, we'll cure you right now. Otherwise, you have to go to the Magic's hospital and like undergo the recovery process.
I also want to point out how funny it is because Winx Club is also an Italian-made cartoon. So like I don't know how the Italian healthcare system is, but like in America, like we're absolutely fucked. Like we don't. Like,
oh my gosh!
Just, like as Americans talking about this like topic too, like we have a very specialized experience of just like absolutely like healthcare is a racket here, and we're just like we just like have to deal with it, and it's disgusting. All of my European audiences are like, what are they talking about?
Also,
it's a different world.
Like the medical gaslighting that happens here of like, oh, you don't look sick, you're not sick, I'm not like. I just want to say in Winx Club,
you're too young to have that.
Yeah, I just want to say in Winx Club, Sky had an invisible illness of the amnesia, and nobody questioned him for a second. Nobody was like, oh, you're making this up for attention. You're too young to have amnesia. You just don't want to.
He was also a man.
Okay, there is that. There is that. But all I'm saying is like the amount of medical gaslighting of like, you will go see these doctors. The appointment alone will cost hundreds of dollars depending on your insurance. And the doctor might just come in and say, you look fine to me. Here's the bill, and then leave.
Yep.
And like that's kind of what we're dealing with.
You're too young to have this problem.
Exactly.
That's what I get told. Oh, you're just stressed out. Come back in a couple months when you're not stressed.
Just like, you know, maybe it'll just go away.
Have you tried to lose weight? You'd probably feel better.
Oh my gosh.
Stop it. Oh my god.
I'm sorry, not to drag this up.
But no, that's so true. And so I think that that's very fair context too, because a lot of my listeners are European, because it's a European IP we're talking about. And it's just like these are things that are real like issues,
and that's why we're asking for better representation. Like I just don't want people to come on here and say like, or to think like, oh, is this really that important, or you know why even spend a whole episode talking about this? Like I'm not interested in this doesn't apply to me. Okay, it doesn't apply to me. Those people, oh, this doesn't apply to me. And I know Colleen says this as well. Anyone can become disabled at any point in their lives. Now I was born with my disabilities, but not everybody is. I have a lot of friends that are disabled, or especially in that blind low vision spectrum. I know a lot of different people, and people have lost their vision for different reasons. And sometimes it's sudden because of an accident, and that could happen to anyone. And it doesn't have to just be blindness, and it doesn't just have to be a physical disability, but just keeping in mind that there's a lot of people who are disabled in the world. We want to be represented because we do. I want to say it's like 25% at least of the United States is like considered having some kind of disability. Again, like I don't want to be fact checked. Maybe I should have Googled it, but it's like a higher number than I think people understand. And also understanding that you can become disabled at any time. And so it's important, again, like Colleen was saying, just to have somebody in a wheelchair in the background, or somebody with an eye patch. Like I know that sounds dumb, but like just somebody using a cane, a not elderly person using a cane, like either a white cane for blindness, a mobility cane, like an actual like walking cane, just literally anything, just to show
anything. Like we'll take the crumbs,
right? Because even if you look at high school, like when we were in high school, okay, if we go back to high school, college, which is when these girls are, this is their age, right? There were people who were disabled in our schools. They exist. Young people who are disabled exist. And again, it doesn't even have to be a main character, but just having them in the background. And that's why it's important. And that's why we're talking about it. And again, if you think it doesn't apply to you, I'm so happy for you. But like, most people know at least one person who's disabled in their life, even if it's an elderly grandparent. Just, I mean, I don't know. That's just my whole thing on it, because I get that a lot of like, oh, this isn't really that important, or like, why talk about it, or why waste time?
Right.
Oh, I'm not disabled,
Ugh,
but well, you could be. I
right.
hope not, but
But also, like, it also brings me back to like the whole, like, I don't know how to explain to you why caring for other people should matter to you. Like, I don't know how to explain like having empathy and like just like not thinking about, because I hate that. And it was the same thing with COVID, right? A lot of people, in 2020, like especially in America, didn't take it seriously because they didn't have someone personally affected by COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Or like they had gotten COVID and it wasn't that bad for them, whatever. Like, I'm sorry, it shouldn't have to happen to you or directly to you or adjacent to you for you to think that this is a big deal
Yeah.
or for you to think that this should matter. Like, it's just like that mentality kills me and I cannot like relate. Like, it's just like I don't get
yeah.
that mentality.
Like, I'm not asking you to go out and like try to solve every disability. If anything, I'm just asking you, again, those on here that are listening that are thinking like, this doesn't affect
Mhm.
me and I don't really need to care. Just know that, I mean, there are a lot of us out there, and just taking a minute to even digest what we're trying to
Mhm.
say and just have a slightly different perspective and be slightly more educated on the subject. I
Yeah.
think that's all we're really
Mm-hmm.
trying to ask here.
Honestly, and I think that that leads us really well into talking about accessibility,
Oh boy.
at at events, at online, like Jet said, like we're just asking you to consider, that like disabled people exist in the world. How can we make it more accommodating for them to exist in the world?
And we deserve to be out there, like,
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
telling,
yes.
like, especially, just going back to COVID when they're saying, like, "Oh, well, if you're sickly, then just don't go out." Like,
Yeah.
people with chronic illnesses deserve to be able to have these same
Mhm.
experiences, and that's the thing with the accessibility that I know we'll get into, but it's like, even if you don't think it's important, just for, like, a half a second, just
Mhm.
think about how there are people that can't do something that you're able to do freely
Yeah.
because we're asking for some kind of accommodation or some kind of mobility aid or something like
Mhm.
that. So
Yeah, it doesn't take much to like just consider others. It doesn't take much, I promise.
If people can be upset about there being events that are exclusive to only one country and they feel left out,
Ayo.
just imagine for a second that you cannot attend any Winx event because it
Mhm.
does not follow ADA accommodations. And I mean, there are some that are, like New York City Comic Con has to or whatever. But like a
Mhm.
lot of these events, like I researched if Coachella was wheelchair accessible,
Yeah.
and it kind of came up as a solid
Mm.
maybe. Like they have,
It's like definitely like a once you get there, probably not, but like they have to like legally
yeah, and
say
they
that
have like
it's
a
the
charity
mhm.
that works exclusively just to get disabled people to be able to attend Coachella. So like that anger people are feeling when there is an event that's not in their country, imagine that about every event ever on the face of the planet where there's like this uncertainty of I might not be able to go because their elevator
Yeah.
might be broken or they might
Ugh.
not have
Well,
disabled
even just
parking.
getting there, because you can't even trust the
Oh, they'll
airline
break my
Yeah.
wheelchair on
completely.
the airlines. Like, there's just so many different levels, and you
Mhm.
could be excluded from all of these events, which is why we kind of need to talk about it now, because like one day
Yeah.
you could be disabled, and the only way you can attend is because people before you advocated for this
Mhm.
Mhm.
accessibility.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And like talking about accessibility, at cons, even like con goers and con peers, like I think need to be as aware of these things as the people that like have to live it, that have to, yeah, that have to
Yeah.
have these things in order to make the con even like accessible to them. Like Colleen, I know a recent competition that you were in, right? You were emailing back and forth with the organizers of like, will there be a ramp there? Can I actually
You
compete in
know,
this?
that doesn't even narrow it down. Like, I can already think of
Right.
at least three cons that I've had that conversation with. And
Right.
I don't know what recent means, so it could be any of them.
I just remember one of them that you were posting and sharing about the experience of like the communication it takes, and even after you communicate so many times, it's still, like you said, a solid maybe. Like
Yeah, and
that's
like I've even had
yeah.
events that have sworn up and down they have a ramp. I have advertised that it will be accessible to my following, which is a lot of people with disabilities.
Hmm.
And then you get to the event and there is no ramp.
Oh my
Like,
God.
so it's not even just like, hey, we can't do this. Like, there are exceptions to the ADA laws. Like, I
Hmm.
understand there are some situations where you cannot put a wheelchair ramp in, but it's a whole nother thing to promise there will be a wheelchair ramp, have a disabled
Yeah,
person speak in favor of you having a wheelchair ramp, and then just not having one. Like, that is a whole
absolutely.
nother level, and that is the sort of thing that I have experienced before.
Yeah. Oh.
Even just bringing it up with these conventions, what I've gotten told is like, "Oh, you know what? We've never had anybody ask slash we've never really thought about it, but yeah, you're right. Maybe we should have a ramp or a wheelchair, like a lift or something to get people onto the stage or whatever." And I mean, it's not just ramps and for people in wheelchairs. I mean, there's just other things. Like, I always ask for, them to put at least an X with some tape on the stage so that I know where the middle of the stage is. So what I would prefer if they could put tape towards the edge of the stage so I know so I don't go off. But as long as there's something in the middle that I can see, I'm like, "All right, I know I'm gonna stay within this realm." But again, what I've gotten, because usually I'll ask for a ramp anyway, because it helps me anyway with, you know, with mobility. But I've heard from a few conventions like, "Oh, yeah, maybe we should do that." And so if you don't ask, you don't know what you don't know. And if it's something that's never been asked for before, but the issue is that for all the years leading up to this convention, there every single person who's a wheelchair user or who has extreme mobility issues and know that they won't be able to get on and off that stage themselves just chooses to not even apply to compete or be part of something at a convention because they're like, well, I've never, I'm sure it won't be accessible. And a lot of people don't choose to ask, and people are afraid to ask
Hmm.
and they don't want to be annoying, but like,
Yeah.
right, so that's why people like us will
Mhm.
bother the conventions to
Yeah.
get these
I mean,
accommodations.
that's
So
how people get, I mean, and even from a like a visibility and like hearing standpoint too of like the experiences that you have at the con, like the visual aids that panels have, if
Mhm.
a mic is on the fritz, like being on top of, like having your organizers be on top of that is so important. I went to a con, it was MomoCon. Like their audio for their main hall, for their main panel, sucked so bad. And all I
mm,
could think about while I was in there was like people that are hard of hearing. Like my hearing is fine. People that are hard of hearing, this would be a terrible experience. And I'm also thinking about too, like the IMAG, the image magnification. I used to be a IMAG director, and like being like one of the biggest things that like they teach you when you are learning how to direct for IMAG is helping your camera operators understand like what to look for when projecting those images on stage for the people in the back, for the people that cannot see well, on the stage, having those directors look for, making sure that the people on the screen don't look like an ant, like if I wanted to see that, I would just look on the stage, like making
Mhm.
sure that like that level of like attention to detail is present. And I know that like cons, like they're a lot, like like there's a million and one things that could happen or go wrong, but like I think the planning and the execution, like the execution really like is it it happens because of the planning and being having the foresight and getting the input from people like us who see these things as a deterrent for someone with a disability to even attend the con. It is so important. Yeah, and like interpreters like for panels too. Like I've only been to a couple of cons that have those, but like people who are ASL users like could benefit so much from having an ASL interpreter. And so things like that like might go unnoticed, or might be like we had mentioned, like, oh, if it doesn't affect me, people just don't think about it. Another thing, and Jett, might be able to speak to this is the accessibility with social media. And that is a huge one that I personally have had experience with. I have a client of mine who is legally blind and a musician, but she cannot use Instagram because nobody uses alt text. And it's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah. So alt text, so when it comes to at least Instagram, no, I can't speak for other social medias because I don't know. I don't know. But Instagram is very much a visual specific, app. And so what you're able to do is when you go to post a photo, you can put your regular caption and all that, but if you go to advanced settings, there's something called alt text. And you can put in alt text for each one. So if you have a carousel of photos that you're posting, you can put in alt text for all of your photos. And basically you just describe what's in the photo. Like if I post a picture of my like Stella.Lupe cosplay, I'll put something like Stella.Lupe cosplay from Winx Club. She is wearing a bright yellow wig. She has large orange wings with multicolored stars on them, describing the outfit. And if the outfit isn't super important or that like crazy, I'll also try to describe like the pose, like, oh, her hand is towards the camera and the background is she's in a garden. You don't have to even get that intense. If anything, just like at least from the cosplay standpoint, putting the name of the cosplay and the show that it's from is even good enough. And so how alt text works is if somebody is using a like a screen reader system either on their phone. I know iPhones have a really good screen read system. I personally use an Android phone, but that's because they have a better large print text system. So, and I'm a large print user versus a screen reader user, but a lot of my friends use screen readers like iPhones, but anyway, that's besides the point. But so when you tap on the image, it will read out loud the alt text. And yes, you can zoom in on pictures, but sometimes it's still hard to tell what is in the picture. So when you tap on that, the alt text will read out loud. And you can also put a description in your caption as well. Which can also be helpful. I personally like it in the alt text better because most people who are going to use the alt text probably can't read your captions and you know what I mean? But I think that either is fine. I do like when people put if it's a very text heavy post, I do like when they write out what's on the thing because sometimes like people use weird fonts and stuff, but like that's really important and it really doesn't take very long to do. And also using captions on any videos that you do like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. I know that Colleen, you actually take a lot of time to do captions on your
Oh,
YouTube
I
videos,
I
right?
actually pay to have it done professionally on my
Oh,
YouTube
right.
videos. But I used to type it out myself and it takes forever. But there are
Yeah.
also services where you can just pay a fee and have someone give professional captions that include things like, and they'll say Colleen claps
Yeah.
in the caption so that you know that, a sound occurred that was a clap and it was coming from Colleen. A lot of people
Mhm.
think that auto captions are enough because it will pick up a lot of the words. A lot of times it won't pick it up correctly. For example, I use crutches and the auto captions will turn it into crotches. And that
No.
that is like a reason I like to have really good captions, but also just the things like, if there's a sound in the background or if there's multiple people speaking, it won't
Mhm.
designate who is saying the words. And if you can't see who's talking, okay, who's talking in this conversation? You need the captions to say, Colleen is saying this. There's just so many different levels to captions, and it makes me so upset when people will just be like, oh, the YouTube auto captions will like capture everything, and I don't need to like even if you can just review the auto captions and
Yeah.
change the misspellings from crotch to crutch and stuff like that alone even helps. But yeah, that's just a big pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, and to I want to hop back real quick to the screen reader conversation too, because on Instagram I know to on Jet said a good point of like if there's a lot of text on your graphic, text on graphic cannot be read by a screen reader, cannot be read by alt text. Like you have to
Mhm.
include that. But then
Mhm.
also something that people don't think about, is Instagram stories, those like little like 24-hour, posts that like you can
Yeah,
share.
there's not
There's
anything
not
that
There's
can be
not a
done
good way
there
to
as
do
far as I
anything.
know.
But what I like to do is if you have text built into your graphic, like if you just post a graphic that has text in it, there are ways to like make that more accessible. And especially, I know that a lot of our friends are not like, English is not their first language, and so Instagram does do a good job of like translating stuff. But if it's still on a graphic, you can't translate what's on a graphic built into a graphic. So I like to type out what's on a graphic. And even if you are an iPhone user, and I'm pretty sure Android does this too, in your photos, you can select text on a graphic, and then you can copy it and paste it right into the text, drag it off to the side of the screen. It's still accessible to people, but it's just you visually you don't see it. So it doesn't mess up your aesthetic, but also is accessible. And it's like, that is like one of the biggest things that I wish like a lot of people did, because then there are also some people that will post stuff not in English, which is fine, whatever, but like I would like to read it, and instead of having to screenshot it and then copy it and then go put it in Google Text like to translate it, I could just translate it on Instagram if they had like done, a caption for it as well. Anyway, that's a very long-winded way of saying like, just like be mindful of like, is if I, could everyone, I know that's really, I feel like that's might be a lofty ask for a lot of people. Is like, I just made this, like making it is so hard. Making content is so hard, and now you want me to make all of this extra stuff, and it's like, really, it's not that much more.
Well, like, there's auto captions. I mean, even for stories, if you're talking or if there's audio,
Yes,
just click the auto caption. And if
absolutely.
you really can't take the time to, go in and meticulously correct it, just anything is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And you can do that on TikTok too, and YouTube and all that. And you can just, I mean, again, auto captions better than nothing.
Yep.
It's not the best,
but
it's better than nothing.
It's at least effort. Like,
yeah.
And alt text does not take that long. I know
Doesn't.
that it takes. I know it's annoying to even have to make a post and put all, do all that, but just at that point, the alt text could take you maybe 30 seconds.
Totally.
It's just, and again, why would somebody who can't see be on Instagram? Because it's a teenager.
Yes.
It's a young person.
Why
like,
can't they be on Instagram?
Yes,
yeah. On Instagram, they want to see cute pictures too. They want to see nice cosplays. They want to see a picture of your dog in front of like the Paris Eiffel Tower or something. I don't know. I'm just thinking of something. They want to see that. They want to see your vacation photos. They just want to know what is in the picture.
Yeah. Before we, kind of wrap up our conversation, I do want to highlight, so Colleen, you mentioned it earlier that one of your cosplays was featured on the official Winx Club Instagram page, which, like, first of all, congratulations. That is very cool.
Thank you.
But also, I want to have a conversation about this because they added some text, right? Or something to the caption.
Yeah, they changed the caption.
Yeah. Do you want to speak on that?
Yeah. So this was my Techna cosplay, which was my first cosplay, and for whatever reason, it got in like the right corner of the internet that a lot of people saw it, and Winx Club shared my photo. Now this was back in like 2021, and I kind of have heard that they do ask permission now before they share your stuff. I don't know, but at the time they did not ask me if they could repost. But I was not upset about it because, like, I mean, it's the Winx Club official account sharing my cosplay, like, so just, like, kind of putting out there, they did not, like, I didn't know this post was coming until it was posted. They did not have any contact with me. They didn't check. And I remember the caption of that photo, just because I thought it was kind of ironic, is the caption was just, like, me complaining about YouTube. Like, it had nothing to do with my disability. It had nothing to do with the Winx Club. It was just me being like, man, it's so hard making YouTube videos, and I'm going on hiatus because it took me forever to make this costume. And, like, it was just this long caption of me talking about YouTube, which a lot of times is my captions. Like, a lot of times they have nothing to do with disability whatsoever.
Right.
But they took this picture of me cosplaying Tecna in my wheelchair, and the caption was "Magic Without Limits, Inspiring Words" from Colleen Cosplay, which, and I believe that's the exact phrasing, which made it sound like a quote from me.
Right.
Like, if they had just phrased it like, "We think this is inspiring," that'd be different, but they basically quoted me saying "Magic Without Limits," and something we've kind of already touched on is it is a limit. Like, there are things I use a wheelchair because I can't walk for very long. Doesn't that sound like a limit? Does that sound like a limit to anybody here? So this whole, like, magic without limits, like, if magic is...
I do think it's, like, partially a translation thing of, like, you know, I don't know if, like... No, what for sure, I definitely get what they were going for, and it definitely was not what you or I would have approved of them saying, because, right, they're trying to be like, "How inspirational.
Yeah.
Look, a person who's disabled. Wow." Like, that's the feeling that we get a lot of the time. We get a lot of the, like, "Oh, wow, you're so brave," or you're such an inspiration." Like, "Wow, can't believe that you could do literally anything sometimes." Oh, well, because, you know, you're a disabled
then
person,
let
so...
Aisha be able to do anything while blind. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, right, there's gonna be things she can't do, like, there's things that Toph can't do from Avatar, and I know I go back to her a lot, but, like, she's a really good representation in my opinion, but yeah, that was funny when they posted that to Instagram. Anyway, it was so good to see, you know,
that they
a
reposted it
disability
all.
representation.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, like, to say that is like, oh, like, that was one of those,
So
"Ooh,
close.
it's not what I would have
So
said."
close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, just, like, for viewers just knowing, like, we're not here to be an inspiration to you. Like, we're
Yeah.
still real people. We still have to deal with this. Like Colleen said,
Yeah.
there's stuff we still can't do.
Or just
Right.
even, like, running that caption by me, because there are plenty of disabled
Yeah.
people who would be 100% okay with that. And obviously, like, I'm glad they featured a disabled person on their page, period. I think that was a good thing. I think it was a step in the right direction. And plenty of disabled people would have been fine with that caption. It was just, and like you said, it might have just been a translation error. It was just interesting to me that I had a caption complaining about YouTube, and then they somehow turned that into magic without limits. It's like...
I don't think that they approve what they're gonna put in the caption. I do think that that they ask people now, but I don't think that they say, "Hey, we're gonna feature you, and this is the caption we're gonna give." Because when I've been featured on other pages, it's if it's not a direct repost, they make up whatever, and I don't know what they're gonna say. And I haven't had any issues with that, but, like, that's what I'm thinking is they're still... I mean, they still have to... it's also marketing and
Yeah.
stuff. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, so I don't know. I was one of, like, the earlier fan shares that they did. This was a few years ago. And it would be cool if they shared, like, more disabled cosplayers on their page too. So I don't know, just a interesting story, I think.
or different diverse cosplayers too. Like, sure, disabled cosplayers, yes, is one of them, but also people that, you know, look different.
Like,
I
a
don't know.
realistic
Like,
view
I
of
mean,
your fan base, like...
yeah, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of
And-
us, and I mean, we don't all look like the girls from Winx too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of... so that is another thing, but you know, that's unfortunately something, like, the fact that Colleen's photo got reposted is, like, really,
Huge.
like, such a... yeah,
Yeah.
that... I mean, it's because it's just so inspirational to the rest of us.
You're just so...
We
you're
could
so
all be like
brave
Colleen.
to wear a fairy costume.
And the other thing is, but you know what I will say, from what I remember at least, and I probably didn't look at them as hard as you did, Colleen, but, like, the comments were actually really
There
good
was
from
one
people.
mean comment, and I can't say for sure if Winx Club deleted it or if this guy just deleted it himself because he realized he was a clown and other people were responding to it. But I remember, because, like, I collab with a lot of people and a lot of people repost my stuff, sometimes without permission. Like, it happens, okay? But the most uncomfortable thing is when I collaborate with someone and they get hate comments, like, intended for me, where someone will feature me and then they'll get a comment So I like have so much nervousness surrounding this that I will check the comments of anyone who tags me or features me. And there was one comment that was like, "You are not Techna." Like, just like, period. And some people in the comments were like, "Hey, this is a cosplay. This isn't like the official, like, this isn't the live action Techna. This is just a person." So I'd like to think that Winx Club actually did moderate their comments, which, looking at their comment section now, I highly doubt, because they have so much spam of like people who leave like 20 comments. So I feel like they don't moderate, but I know that comment left somehow. So I'm just gonna believe that Winx Club does care and that they did delete that comment because they do care about disabled people. Like, that's gonna be my headcanon for the scenario.
I think that's fine. I think that's a good one. Oh my gosh. Well, awesome. I want to say thanks again for coming on to the show, talking about this. I think that it's an important conversation that even if you're not disabled yourself, or if you don't have any disabled people in your life, that it is worth hearing these different, perspectives. And I think that Winx Club's community and like what Winx Club represents is inclusive and inclusivity and caring about others. And I think that that more conversations like this need to happen in these types of spaces. And so thank you guys for sharing your experiences, as always, but also for just being in the Winx Club community. Like, I love that I get to connect with so many different people on so many different, Winx Club aspects, but the fact that we are all US Winxers is so refreshing and nice. Like, that is, oh my God, it's just such a treat when we all get together.
Yeah, it was so exciting to be able to do this. I'm so glad, and it really means a lot for you to want to include this topic as a conversation on this podcast. And I know that it's that you reach a lot of different people, and you reach people, outside of mine or Colleen's like main community of and people like us too. And it really means a lot, at least, to see that somebody wants to feature us and talk about this, not just feature us because, oh, look at, we got diversity on my podcast. Like, we're like, and like, I know that sounds bad.
No, yeah.
But 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 it's like, it shows that you really care, and that this is an important topic to you. And I'm sure I speak for both of us, but we really appreciate that.
Thank you. Oh, you guys are great. This has been great. And I mean, we've got to do this again. This is just so much fun. Tell our listeners where they can find you two online and maybe some things that you guys got coming up.
I am Colleen Cosplay on YouTube and on Instagram. What I have coming up is I've been suffering over a Miku cosplay for the last 5 months. That's all I have to offer is Miku right now. But after I escape Miku, I will be making another Winx cosplay. I already have fabrics for it, so more Winx is coming. It'll always be there. We're going for Winx cosplay number 10 or something.
Awesome.
Yes. I am Jette.Lupe. It is JETTEE.LUPE. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. I am definitely most active on Instagram, but I was extremely active on TikTok, and I eventually may get back to being more active over there. And I recently had kind of my biggest conventions of the year, and I did quite a few Sylveon from Pokemon. I did a Taylor Swift cosplay, which I was so excited about. And coming up later this year, I have another Pokemon cosplay. I'll be doing Altaria, as well as another Taylor Swift cosplay. I'll be doing the pink 1989 outfit. But I actually just started taking votes on my next Winx Club cosplay, because I was doing like one every other year, because I tend to do like the big transformations, and they're a lot of work. So I usually only do them once every other year, just because they're a lot of work. It's a lot of work to wear too. So I started doing some voting on my story to figure out what one I will do next, and that should come early next year. I'll probably start working on it this fall is my guess. But we'll see. Who knows? I might throw another one in there, but definitely more. It's always more Pokemon, and a little Taylor Swift.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. Well, friends, if you want to check out any of Colleen or Jet's content, please do. I love following along all of their cosplay ventures and their con adventures. It's so incredibly cool to check out. So you can find all of those links in the description below. Thank you guys again so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of the Winx Forever podcast, be sure to follow on your preferred streaming platform so that you're notified when new episodes drop. The theme for the Winx Forever podcast is the song She Makes Magic by Big Wild.